Welcome, everyone. My name is Alicia Mullen, and I'll be talking to you today about fear and getting out of your comfort zone. I see you, O'Neill. I invite you to turn off your cameras if you're comfortable doing so. If not, really, I invite all or turn on or off your cameras. I also invite you to join me in the chat. Join me in the chat at any point in time during this presentation. Post in the chat if you have questions. Post in the chat if you just want to say hello. I miss a lot of you. Hey, y'all. Post in the chat if you have an insight, a learning, an experience. I definitely come from a place as a facilitator, recognizing that there's a lot of experience, in this virtual room. Therefore, I want to leverage some of your experience too. So if I mention anything that you personally have experience with, and you're like, yep, I hear you. Yep, I've done that. Yep. This is how that's worked for me. Let me know that in the chat too. And I get you, Felicia, eating dinner. Yes. Take care of yourself and your needs as well. So let me know, or let me tell you where this topic is coming from for me. In the work that I do as a leadership coach and an organizational consultant, I'm often asked to help people with their team challenges or their staffing challenges. Basically, they're people challenges. We can do our jobs quite well. One thing that we tend to struggle with is our people, dealing with people and building relationships with one another. And being a leadership coach, leaders ask me about how to help their teams excel and advance. And one thing I often find that gets in the way of people advancing and excelling and kind of just going out there, pursuing whatever they want to pursue, is this topic of fear and being able to get out of their comfort zone. This topic is also personal and important for me because I think this is something that I have struggled with. I am struggling with, and therefore I want to share with you some of the things I've learned along the way. And I'm seeing things pop up in the chat. Shanita agrees with me. In terms of our agenda, first, we'll start with some just understanding of fear. What is fear? What is happening in our minds and our bodies as we experience fear? We'll then move into why considering fear and getting out of your comfort zone is important. And I'm going to assume if you're here, you probably know why it's important. You can probably assume or even apply some of these things to your personal experience as well as aspirations. And then we'll end in the action aspect. What can you do? I'll share some mental models that get in the way, that reinforce the fear, as well as how we can combat some of those mental models. I do want to give you the disclaimer that I am not a trained psychiatrist. My background is in industrial and organizational psychology. So it's specifically psychology as it relates to us in the workplace and how we navigate work situations. So I'm going to stay in my lane. And talk about fear from that perspective. There are very very real phobias and disorders like anxiety or PTSD, I'm not going to touch those topics. I really am going to stay as it relates to work itself, but we are going to dive into the, biology of fear. Okay, let's get started. Let's get started with a quote. I want to ground us in this quote, and shout out to my mom for putting me on Judy Blume when I was like 10. Judy Blume, an author, so awesome. Here is a quote from her. Each of us must confront our fears, must come face to face with them. How we handle our fears will determine where we go with the rest of our lives, to experience adventure or to be limited by the fear of it. What really stands out to me with this quote is that Judy doesn't, I say Judy like I know her personally, like me and her on a first name relationship basis, but Judy doesn't say be fearless. There is that common mantra of being fearless. For me, what I've learned in my experience, and we're going to look at this from a biology perspective too, fearlessness is a myth. It's not real. Fearlessness is not a thing. Therefore, we must confront our own fears, and we confront them by first having an awareness of and understanding them. So that's where I'm going to take us next. My mom's getting some love in the chat. Okay, so let's talk about fear. You know what? Before I even go there, let me ask you this, something to ask you in the chat, just so I know what's out there. What type of fears limit you? Tell me that in the chat. What type of fears limit you? What are some of the fears standing in the way of you achieving your wildest dreams? Let me know. Is it a fear of public speaking? Is it a fear of failure? Is it a fear of being seen as inadequate? Tell me a little bit more, and I'll give you a heads up. I have you all muted. You can't unmute yourself. So you can only communicate with me in the chat, and I encourage you to do so. Okay, fear of the unknown, fear of failure. I see multiple times. Fear of judgment, yeah. Failure in general, again. Confidence, how will others perceive me? Yeah. Imposter syndrome, I think that's also coupled with there's a fear of failure aspect to imposter syndrome, as well as perfectionism, which I'll talk about that a bit too. Fear of rejection. Ruth says all of the above. Yeah, those were the type of fears that I had in mind when I started teaching this content. So let's learn a little bit more about fear itself. So this definition is from a couple of psychiatry professors at Wayne State University. So fear is a fundamental, deeply wired reaction evolved over the history of biology to protect organisms against perceived threats to their integrity and existence. That's a long-ish definition to say. What I really take from that is fear is normal. Fear is normal and a very regular aspect to the human experience. What I also take from that is fear protects us. To protect organisms against perceived threat to their integrity or existence. It protects us. It makes sure that we stay alive, that we're unharmed as much as possible. What I want to do here is not downplay the value of fear. Fear has its place. If we were all walking around here fearless, we probably won't survive for too long. Many of us wouldn't be alive for too long because we would be making some pretty dumb decisions if we were just totally void of any type of fear. What we really want to think about is how our minds now use this fear to analyze perceived threats that may not actually be threats. Seeing some things in the chat, some also some fears being acknowledged here, fear of making a mistake, as well as a fear of success being acknowledged in the chat. Yeah. So, what happens when fear turns from this very normal, very protective aspects that we need to something that's actually getting in our way? We'll talk about that a bit. But first, I want to talk about what actually happens in our emotional parts of our brains and our thinking parts of our brains when we experience fear. So, when we experience fear, our emotional brain immediately reacts. It detects the stimuli, it triggers an emotional response, an immediate emotional response. It activates a physical response. And that physical response, we're all familiar with it. It can be an increased heart rate, it can be a heightened awareness, it may be heavy breathing. When we talk about fight or flight, that's this very physical response to fear. Now, after the emotional brain kicks in, the thinking brain kicks in. It takes a bit longer, a few seconds, probably not even a full second longer, because the thinking parts of the brain, that part interprets the perceived threat. It processes the context. It takes a little longer for the interpretation and the process to happen. That's why it happens a little bit later after the emotional response. Now, once we're able to interpret the perceived threat and process the context of that threat, then we're able to say, yeah, this is a real threat to me. I am validated in having this physical and emotional response, or it reassures us of our safety. Let me give you an example here. Give me a Zoom reaction. Give me a Zoom reaction if you've ever been to a haunted house. I'm seeing some thumbs up. Yep. People have been to haunted houses. So let me tell you how this relates. So when you're in a haunted house and say, I don't know, Freddy Krueger jumps out at you, you're going to have a reaction. Typically, you have a reaction. That emotional response, that physical response is activated. A split second after that reaction happens, you're able to interpret that Freddy Krueger. Like, wait, this guy is just acting. It's not real. These are fake claws he's wearing. I'm in a haunted house. I paid for this haunted house. I'm not in any real danger. So therefore, my reassurance of safety is coming into play. And then maybe I go from screaming to laughing. Or I'm realizing that, you know what, I'm having this fear response, but I'm safe. I'm okay. I'm actually enjoying myself within having this response. So that's how the two aspects of our brain and as well as our bodies work together. Now, I do want to note that fear can create a distraction, which is actually a good thing. And what I mean by distraction is oftentimes when we're in a state of fear, we're focused. We're focused. We're in the moment. We're prepared, like other functionings within our body that are not related to the fight or flight response, they start to decrease while all of our other senses heighten. So that's actually a good aspect to this. Now, the flip side of that is fear can be debilitating. So that's where that fight, flight, or freeze aspect comes into play. Now, the debilitating aspect is what can be an issue for us. This becomes problematic because this is when it can be when something like fear that was designed to be a life-saving defense mechanism is now defending us from something that may be perceived as a threat, but can also be the key that unlocks our future. And that's why this is an important topic to consider as we progress throughout our lives. I also want to note, because I got this question in the registration form in terms of trauma and past trauma. It should be noted that fear can also be a learned behavior. Fear can be reinforced. And what I mean by that is, say I do branch out on my comfort zone. Say I take a stretch assignment and I'm presenting to the CEO of my organization and I bomb. I do a horrible job. With that experience, that those negative emotional feelings attached to that experience, it will decrease the likelihood that I'll try to step out of my comfort zone again, or try to have that type of a stretch assignment. So the same is true with past trauma. Those negative emotions that we harbor towards certain experiences can continue and perpetuate and be reinforced unless we disrupt those patterns of thinking. And so that's what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about disrupting patterns of thinking. But before we even go there, I want to do a demonstration. So I am going to stop share of my screen. Let me close this too. Hi, Yuli. I see you. Okay, so a demonstration for all of you. Just clasp your hands like this. Clasp your hands, and I want you to notice what thumb is on top. For me, my left thumb is on top of my right. And just notice that. Notice, that feeling and how that was. Now I want you to unclasp and do it again with the other thumb on top. Now notice how that feels. Tell me in the chat. First, tell me in the chat, when you just clasp your hands, how was that for you? Give me some of the words that describe that experience. I see comfort. Ooh, I love it because my point is already made. In my mind, my point is made with the word comfort coming up right there. Comfort, natural, calming. I do see some uncomfortable, natural, nice, normal. Okay, now when you undid that and did it the other way, tell me how that felt. What were some of those words or phrases when you did it again? I'm seeing unusual, I'm seeing awkward, I'm seeing weird, don't like it, it's uncomfortable, incorrect, weird, uncomfortable, yeah, different, wrong, says Shanita, yeah, funny, says Adrienne. Okay, yeah. Exactly that. And that's how it feels when we're in our comfort zones, right? When we're in our comfort zones, I'm gonna scroll back up and look at some of those words. Comfort, natural, calming, natural. I'm seeing multiple times. Natural, nice, normal. When we're in our comfort zone, that feels good to us, right? And then when we stretch beyond our comfort zone, when we're doing something new or unfamiliar, some of those words that came up for you were unusual, awkward, weird, I don't like it, uncomfortable, incorrect. That's how it feels when we venture outside of our comfort zone. Now, tell me this, tell me in the chat, where does learning happen? Where does growth happen? Where does mobility happen? Inside or outside of your comfort zone? I already see outside. In discomfort always, says Mel. Yeah, outside. It is outside. And I mean, you're here. So I think you already know some of these things, but just to reinforce this learning that when you're outside of your comfort zone, that's where the growth happens. When we venture to do something that makes us fearful, when we venture to do something that makes us a little bit nervous, make us a little bit awkward, make us afraid, that's where the learning happens. That's where the growth happens. Shanita said, I see what you did there. Yeah, I like doing things like that. But you all are so spot on. That's where the learning happens outside of your comfort zone. I told you, I've been speaking. I'm going to try to, and I say try because as long as my, oh, okay, yeah, my bandwidth works. Oh no. Sean, could you please make me the host again? We're playing around with these host functions. What I was saying, okay, perfect. I just became host. I've told you this. We're going to hear from Will Smith. I'm going to show you this video from Will Smith that I think also makes the point, really makes the point for us. Can you hear that? Can you all hear that?
Skydiving is a really interesting confront with fear. I gotta stand up. I'm sorry, I gotta stand up. You go out the night before and you take a drink with your friends and somebody says, yeah, we should go skydiving tomorrow. And you go, yeah, we'll go skydiving tomorrow. Yeah. And you go, yeah. And everybody goes, yeah. And you go home you by yourself, you're like, Right? You're like, well, I mean, they was drunk too. So then that night you're laying in your bed and you just keep, and you're terrified. You keep imagining over and over again jumping out of an airplane and you can't figure out why you would do that. So you get there and then you have this safety brief and you're standing there and the guys will tell you, well, if the chute doesn't open, what's going to happen is well, why the hell, what could happen? So you get onto the airplane and you're sitting there and you know, it's extra because you're sitting on some dude's lap, some stranger, trying to make small talk. Yeah, man. So you be jumping with people all the time, huh? So you fly and you go up to 14,000 feet and somebody opens the door. And in that moment, you realize you've never been in a freaking airplane with the door open. Terror, 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 terror. And then people start going out of the airplane. And the guy walks you up to the end of the thing, and you're standing and your toes are on the edge, and you're looking out down to death. They say, on 3. 1, 2, and he pushes you on 2 because people grab on 3. And you fall out of the airplane, and in 1 second, you realize that it's the most blissful experience of your life. You're flying. There's zero fear. You realize that the point of maximum danger is the point of minimum fear. The lesson for me was, why were you scared in your bed the night before? What do you need that fear for? Everything up to the stepping out, there's actually no reason to be scared. And then in that moment, all of a sudden, where you should be terrified is the most blissful experience of your life. And God placed the best things in life on the other side of fear. That was my experience with skydiving and fear.
All right.
All right.
Okay, just to reinforce that point, the greatest lessons, the greatest opportunities, the greatest potential is on the other side of fear. I want to give some personal stories too, not necessarily about skydiving. However, if you're interested in skydiving, you want to go skydiving, call your girl, because I would go with you. Okay, I am so down. But I wanted to tell you about my 2 experiences of moving into different parts of the country. The first one, and let me play around with my screens here for the recording. So my first experience was in 2011. In 2011, being a native of the Metro Detroit area, in 2011, I received the opportunity to move to Jackson, Mississippi, with a career. It was a career opportunity, a job offer that I had. And I had never lived in Mississippi a day in my life. I don't think I had ever even been to Mississippi a day in my life. Matter of fact, it's like, okay, Alicia, you're going to move to Mississippi. Your ancestors went the other direction. You know, they went away from the South for a reason, and you're going to turn around and go to the South. And there I was met with the choice of, do I stay where I'm comfortable, where my friends are, where my family is? Do I stay, or do I just go, not knowing what's to come of this opportunity? What do I do? Those who know me know I did decide to move to Mississippi, and there I met my husband. Totally unexpected, but there I met my husband. A year later, in 2012, I received another opportunity to move to California. Now, this was just in a year. It was either, do I move back to Michigan again, where I'm comfortable, where things are familiar, where I know the roads and the highways, where I know the people, where I know what to expect, or do I move all the way across the country to California, where again, I've never lived, I don't really know anyone. Do I just take the leap to experience a new place and just see the opportunity? And again, I took the latter. Like, okay, let's go to California. Let's see what's out there for me. And what was really pivotal in this experience, what I love about California, what will always be a special place in my heart. So many great things happened in California, but the one thing that I think is pivotal is that I found me in California. I found myself in California. I found my purpose. I found my calling. I found my own voice. And it's often true for many of us that we have to be in a place where we're unfamiliar. And it may not necessarily be a physical location. Maybe it's a mindset. Maybe it's just a new environment, people wise. Maybe it's not an actual physical location, but we have to remove ourselves from the noise of normal to receive clarity, to open new doors and new opportunities. I think I sold you. Have I sold you on doing something new? It may not be skydiving, it may not be moving to a new place, but at least something that may be outside of your comfort zone. Okay, since I think I've proven my case, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you some of the mental models I mentioned. So what gets in our way? Let's talk more about we can what we can do, just looking at things in the chat. Let's talk about what we can do to force ourselves to think differently, right? Because yes, we have this fear. Yes, it's uncomfortable to get outside of our comfort zone. So, Alicia, what do I do? How can I start to think differently? Now, the mental models I'll show you, the framework of a mental model in general is something that we tell ourselves, an assumption, a belief that we have that inform our thinking. Therefore, it informs our actions and our behavior. And sometimes these mental models are productive for us, but they can also be hindrances, and therefore we need to disrupt these patterns of thinking. Let me show you what I mean by that. So, what if? The what if, and insert your worst case scenarios. You know, what if I fail? I saw that already in the chat. What if something goes wrong? What if the people stop liking me or don't like me in the first place? What if I'm embarrassed? What if things don't go the way I don't want to? What if, you know, we can continue this pattern while inserting the worst case scenario. Another another mental model that we can struggle with is, I'm not confident I can do it, so I'm not even going to try. I'm not sure I can do that, so why even try it? And that's where that perfectionism comes into play here. I'm only going to do the things that I know I can do perfectly. And therefore, I'm not going to venture outside of that. The next thought pattern is, it never has been, so it never can be. I've never seen it done this way. No one has ever achieved this. So who do I think I am? Who do I think I am to think that I can make a difference? Who do I think I am that I can do that if it's never been done? Another thought pattern that can circulate here is no one who's looked like me has ever done this. No one, there's never been a Black woman to do X, Y, and Z. So how, who am I? Again, who am I to think that I can do that thing that I'm dreaming about doing? Tell me in the chat, do these resonate with you? What are some of the things you typically tell yourself when you're confronted with fear, when you're confronted with your comfort zone, and then you talk yourself out of it? What are some of the things you tell yourself? Is it some of these or is it something else? Tell me in the chat. I'll give you a moment to think about this. Think about it and start to respond. What will others think of me? What if I dislike it even more than the current situation? Yeah, the what ifs. Don't know if I can make it happen, no experience. So I'm assuming the next part of that is so you don't even try. Like I don't know if I can make a difference. So why am I even going to make the effort? It's not going to be worth it. I could say even the what if it's not worth it? What if it's too late? Yeah, it's never too late. If you're alive, it's never too late. I'm not going to try this because I don't think I can do it. How much time will it take? Yeah. I'm just reading some of this in the chat. Shanita mentioned that she's talked herself out. I talked herself out of really good business ideas just to see some of the same products or services in stores, right? I've so done that. Like, oh man, that would be a good idea. And then I never act on it. And then boom, someone else is acting on it. But sometimes it's because I lost interest. Sometimes it's because of a lack of resources. I'm not experienced enough or not have what it takes. I'm not qualified. My voice doesn't matter. Yeah. But if not, who you? If not you, who? That's it. That's what I was going for. If not you, who? I don't want to disappoint, Ruth says. Yeah, so I can see some of these mental models, some of these patterns of thinking come up for you too. So let's replace them. What do we replace them with? Let's start to replace some of these patterns. So replace the what if, insert what worst case scenario with the best case scenario. What if you do it? What if you can do it? What if you succeed? What if that is your business? What else? What if it's actually better than you thought? What if it's the best that it ever could be? Replacing that what if worst case scenario with what if best case scenario. And then replacing the I'm not confident I can do it, so I'm not going to try. So I saw some of that in the chat. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I have the experience. I don't know if my voice matters. Replace that with, would I make mistakes? I learn. I mentioned earlier that this one is grounded, the thinking of I can't do it or I don't think I can do it, so I'm not even going to try. It's grounded in perfectionism. Therefore, we stick to our realm of like talent or abilities or current competence instead of thinking, you know what, if I make a mistake, I learn from it, using those mistakes as learning opportunities. And I know that's so cliche, but as someone in the learning and development field, um, there's a particular mindset. It's called the growth mindset that this is applied to. It is researched, it is studied that when we approach situations where we're open to making those mistakes and using those mistakes as learning opportunities, we're more likely to have a successful outcome. I'm looking for a quote. I have a quote to share with you here. Oh, let me give you this quote. Losers quit when they fail, and winners fail until they succeed. I think that just captures this point here. Failure is not a place of completion. Failure is not a period. It's a comma. Fail and keep going. Fail and learn from it. So if you can't do it now, if you don't have the confidence or competence, it's okay. Try it out anyway. The next pattern of thinking, so we're replacing that it never has been, so it never can be, with it's possible. It's possible. Just because you've never seen it before doesn't mean it never can be. Think about all the things. Think about all the things that never was, that we're now standing in the manifestation of it. For example, the internet. Think about how bizarre of a concept the internet is. Some of us remember when there was no internet, where the internet didn't exist, right? But now we can access some type of invisible force field and connect with everyone else in the world. Think about how insane that is. But someone thought it was possible and therefore had the audacity to try it out. I'm trying to think where I want to go next with this. I guess when it comes down to it, it's encouraging you when you're in those moments where you're having those patterns of thinking where they're reinforcing the fear. Notice it. Be aware. I got it. My girl Joyce Meyer says, think about what you're thinking about. Think about your thinking. Notice when you're in those patterns of thinking, when you're thinking, what if the worst case scenario happens? Or I can't do it, so I'm not even going to try. Or it never has been. Capture those thoughts and replace them with some of these more productive thoughts. I'm getting ready to wrap us up. We're coming up on the hour, and I want to end with this. Courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the assessment that something else is more important than fear. And for me, what's more important than fear is you, my friends, your aspirations, your business ideas, your career opportunities, your projects, your stretch assignments, your success, your joy is more important than that fear. I want to thank you. Thank you all for joining me, giving me a little bit of your evening. If you have any questions, I'm happy to chat. We can chat a little bit more about this before you logged off. If you're interested in more of the work I do, you can visit my website at www.growwithalicia.com, grow with Alicia, ALLEYSHA.com. And you'll be receiving an evaluation form in your email. So I would love to have your feedback on this session. Thank you again for joining me. I'll stop the recording. I'll allow you to unmute yourself. So if you have any questions, we can talk a little bit more. And if not, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks, everyone.